The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. A sterile cage where my consciousness clawed its way back from oblivion. I woke to a stranger's hand gripping mine, his calloused fingers trembling as if afraid I'd slip away again. My name is Ethan Harper, and the last thing I remembered was a college party in 2018 now. Somehow, it was 2025, and the man beside me wore a wedding ring that matched the one on my finger. My eyes struggled to focus on him. Caleb Monroe, the guy who'd once sneered at me across lecture halls, who'd called me a pretentious wannabe during our heated debates at UCLA. His sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes hadn't changed, but the hostility I remembered was gone, replaced by something raw grief. Maybe. Or guilt. "Ethan," he whispered, voice cracking. "You're awake." I yanked my hand back, my head spinning. Married. To him. The man who'd made my college years a battlefield. The doctor, a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Patel, explained it later. A car accident had stolen 3 years of my life, leaving me in a coma. Caleb had been there every day, she said, fighting for me when my own family wavered. But why? The question burned as I stared at the gold band on my finger, a symbol of a life I didn't remember building. Caleb hovered nearby, his broad shoulders slumped, like he was bracing for rejection. I needed answers, but my voice was a rasp, and my memories were a shattered mosaic. The hospital discharged me a week later, and Caleb drove us to a small, sunlit house in Santa Monica. The place felt foreign, yet intimate. Photos of us laughing on beaches, hiking in Yosemite, kissing under Christmas lights. Each image was a dagger, proof of a love I couldn't recall. "We've been together 5 years," Caleb said softly, setting a mug of tea before me. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed a storm. "Married for 2. I wanted to scream that this was impossible, that he'd hated me, that I'd hated him. Instead, I asked, 'Why did you stay?' He looked away, jaw tight. "Because I couldn't lose you again." The words hung heavy, a riddle wrapped in pain. I didn't trust him. Not yet. But something in his voice, a crack of vulnerability, kept me from running. That night, I lay in our shared bed, Caleb on the couch downstairs, and I wondered, what kind of man stays with someone who might never remember him? Days turned into weeks, and I pieced together our past like a detective in my own life. Caleb was patient, answering my endless questions. "We'd met again after college," he said, "at a bookstore in San Francisco. I'd been working there, still chasing dreams of writing novels, while he'd traded his arrogance for a job teaching high school history. You changed me," he admitted one evening, stirring a pot of chili in our cozy kitchen. "You saw something in me I didn't see in myself." I wanted to believe him, but the Caleb I remembered was cruel, competitive, everything I'd despised. Yet evidence of our life was undeniable. Friends dropped by: Lila, a vibrant artist with pink hair, and Javier, a quiet chef with a warm smile. They spoke of our wedding, a small ceremony on a cliffside, where Caleb had cried reading his vows. "You two were unstoppable," Lila said, her eyes misty. I smiled, but inside, I was drowning. How could I love someone I didn't know? And why did my heart race when Caleb's hand brushed mine? One night, I found a journal in my nightstand, my handwriting scrawled across the pages. Entries from 2020 described our first date, a nervous dinner where Caleb apologized for college, admitting he'd been jealous of my confidence. "He's not who I thought," I'd written. "He's kind, broken, real." I read until dawn, each page a glimpse into a love I'd lost. But the journal ended abruptly, dated just before the accident. A single line haunted me: "Caleb's hiding something, and I'm scared to ask." The next morning, I confronted him. "What aren't you telling me?" I demanded, my voice sharp. Caleb's face paled, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. He sank onto the couch, hands clasped. "It's not what you think," he said, "but you deserve the truth." My pulse pounded as he began to speak, his words unraveling everything I thought I knew. Caleb's voice was low, almost a whisper, as he told me about the night of the accident. We'd been driving home from a friend's wedding in Napa, laughing, drunk on love and wine. You were singing to some awful pop song, he said, a faint smile breaking through his pain. Then the truck came out of nowhere. He paused, swallowing hard. I was driving. Ethan. I walked away with bruises. You didn't. Guilt radiated from him, a weight he'd carried for 3 years. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for stealing my memories. But his eyes dreamed. Haunted stopped me. I thought I'd lost you. He continued. When they said you might not wake up. His voice broke, and he buried his face in his hands. I stood frozen, torn between anger and an ache I couldn't name. Why did his pain feel like mine? I spent the next few days avoiding him, retreating to the guest room with my journal. The entries grew more vivid, painting a picture of a man I barely recognized. Caleb had been a closeted jock in college, his cruelty a shield for his own insecurities. After coming out, he'd sought me out to make amends, and somehow, we'd fallen in love. But one entry chilled me. Caleb's been getting calls late at night. He says it's work, but I don't believe him. I snapped the journal shut, my stomach twisting. What else was he hiding? Santa Monica buzzed with life outside our house. But inside, tension simmered. Caleb tried to bridge the gap, cooking my favorite meals, pancakes with blueberries, pasta with homemade sauce, but I kept him at arm's length. One evening, Lila invited us to a gallery opening downtown. It'll be good for you both, she insisted. I agreed, desperate for a distraction. The gallery was a kaleidoscope of color, filled with artists and hipsters sipping overpriced wine. Caleb stayed close, his presence a quiet comfort despite my doubts. At the event, I met Marcus, a photographer with a warm laugh and a knack for making me feel seen. He was openly gay, confident in a way I envied, and we talked for hours about art and life. Caleb watched from across the room, his jaw tight. When Marcus handed me his card, Caleb's hand found mine, possessive yet gentle. You okay? He asked, his voice low. I nodded, but the spark of jealousy in his eyes stirred something in me, a flicker of the love I'd lost. Back home, I couldn't sleep. I wandered to the living room, where Caleb was grading papers, his glasses slipping down his nose. Why didn't you tell me about the calls? I asked, holding up the journal. His face fell, and for a moment, I thought he'd shut down. Instead, he sighed. It was my brother, Nate, he said. He's troubled, addicted. I didn't want you to worry. I pressed him, sensing there was more, but he shook his head. That's all, Ethan. I swear. The next week, I started therapy with Dr. Elena Ruiz, a specialist in memory recovery. She encouraged me to rebuild my life, to trust my instincts. Your heart might remember what your mind doesn't, she said. I tried, spending time with Caleb at the beach, watching him surf with a grace that felt familiar. One day, he pulled me into the waves, laughing as we tumbled in the surf. For a moment, I forgot my doubts, caught in the warmth of his smile. But that night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ask Caleb about Chicago. Chicago. The word hit like a punch. My journal mentioned a trip we'd planned there, but nothing more. When I asked Caleb, his face hardened. It's nothing, he said, too quickly. Just a work conference. But his eyes darted away, and I knew he was lying. I waited until he was asleep, then searched his desk, finding a locked box hidden in a drawer. My hands shook as I held it, knowing whatever was inside could shatter everything. The box was small, metal, and heavy with secrets. I didn't have the key, but the weight of it in my hands felt like a betrayal. I confronted Caleb at breakfast, slamming the box on the kitchen table. What's in here? I demanded. His face drained of color, And for the first time, I saw panic in his eyes. "Ethan, please," he said, reaching for me. I stepped back. "Open it." He hesitated, then pulled a key from his wallet. Inside was a stack of letters, yellowed and worn, addressed to me in Caleb's handwriting. "I wrote these while you were in the coma," he said, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know if you'd ever read them." I grabbed one, my hands trembling as I read. "I'm sorry for every cruel word I said in college. I was scared of who I was, and you were everything I wanted to be." Another letter spoke of our first kiss, under a street lamp in San Francisco, and how he'd known then he'd love me forever. Tears blurred my vision, but anger kept me grounded. "This doesn't explain Chicago," I said. Caleb's shoulders sagged. "Nate was in trouble," he admitted. "He got mixed up with some bad people there. I went to help him, but I didn't tell you everything because I didn't want you involved." His voice broke. "I was trying to protect you. I wanted to believe him, but the text from the unknown number gnawed at me. Who was watching us?" I started digging, using Caleb's laptop to search for clues. I found emails from Nate, cryptic and desperate, mentioning debts and threats. One name stood out: Vincent, a loan shark in Chicago. My heart raced as I realized Caleb had been shielding me from a dangerous truth. That night, I called the number from the text. A gravelly voice answered. "Tell your husband to pay up, or you're both in trouble." The line went dead, and fear coiled in my chest. I didn't tell Caleb about the call. Instead, I watched him, searching for cracks in his story. He was trying cooking dinner, planning walks, sharing stories of our past, but the locked box and the mysterious text had fractured my trust. One evening, we attended a fundraiser for a local LGBTQ shelter, a cause we'd apparently championed together. Caleb's speech about love and resilience moved the crowd, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something bigger. Marcus, the photographer, was there, and his easy smile was a welcome distraction. We talked late into the night, and he offered to help me recover memories through photography, suggesting we recreate moments from my past. Caleb watched us, his expression unreadable. When we got home, he pulled me close, his voice raw. "I know you're scared," he said, "but I'm not going anywhere." His kiss was desperate, a plea for trust, and for a moment, I let myself believe him. But the next day, I found a photo in the locked box, tucked beneath the letters. It was Caleb, younger, with a man I didn't recognize, their arms around each other in a Chicago alley. On the back, in Caleb's handwriting, "Me and Vince, 2019. My blood ran cold. Vincent wasn't just into me, he was someone Caleb knew, someone from before me. I clutched the photo, my heart pounding. Who was Caleb, really? And what had he dragged us into? The photo burned in my hand, a silent accusation. I waited until Caleb came home from work, his tie loosened, his face tired but soft. "Who's Vince?" I asked, holding up the photo. His eyes widened, and for a moment, he looked like a man staring down a cliff. "Ethan, it's not what you think," he said, but his voice shook. I didn't let him finish. "You lied about Chicago. You lied about him." Caleb sank into a chair, defeated. "Vincent was someone I knew in college," he said, "before I came out, before I met you again. He was trouble then, and he's worse now." He explained that Vincent had been his first love, a reckless fling that ended badly. Years later, when Nate got tangled with Vincent's loan sharking ring, Caleb had gone to Chicago to settle the debt. "I didn't tell you because I was ashamed," he admitted. "I thought I could fix it without dragging you in." His words made sense, but they didn't erase the betrayal. I left the house, needing air, needing space. I wandered to the beach, where Marcus found me, his camera slung over his shoulder. "You look lost," he said, his voice gentle. I told him everything: the coma, the lies, the photo. Marcus listened, then handed me his camera. "Take a picture," he said. "It helps you see clearly." I snapped a shot of the ocean, and somehow, the act steadied me. But when I looked at Marcus, I saw only a friend, not a future. I returned home to find Caleb packing a bag. "I'm going to Chicago," he said. "I need to end this with Vincent. For us." Fear gripped Minute for myself. "But for him." "I'm coming with you," I said, surprising us both. He protested, but I was done being the passenger in my own life. We flew out the next morning. The tension between us thick, but laced with something deep. Shared resolve. Chicago was a maze of gray streets and bitter wind. We tracked Vincent to a dive bar in Wicker Park, where he sat like a kingpin, all sharp suits and sharper eyes. "You owe me, Monroe," he said, his gaze flicking to me. Caleb stood firm, offering a deal to clear Nate's debt. Vincent laughed, cold and cruel. "You think you can walk away?" he said. "I know everything about you too." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about money, it was personal. That night, in a cheap motel, Caleb broke down. "I should have told you everything," he said, tears streaming. "Vincent knows about us. About the accident. He's been watching." I held him, my anger melting into something fiercer love. Maybe. Or the ghost of it. We made a plan, pay Vincent enough to back off, then leave Chicago for good. But as we fell asleep, tangled together, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into a trap. The meeting with Vincent was set for dawn in an abandoned warehouse on Chicago's south side. Caleb clutched my hand as we approached, his grip steady despite the fear in his eyes. Inside, Vincent waited with two men, their presence a silent threat. "You brought your husband," Vincent sneered, his eyes raking over me. "Romantic." Caleb handed over a duffel bag of cash, every cent we'd scraped together. "This ends now," he said, his voice steel. Vincent counted the money, his smile fading. "You think this is enough?" he said. "You owe me for years, Monroe." My heart raced as his men stepped closer. I saw it then, the glint of a gun in Vincent's hand. Time slowed, and I acted on instinct, shoving Caleb behind a crate as a shot rang out. Chaos erupted. Caleb tackled one of the men, and I grabbed a metal pipe, swinging wildly. We fought, not just for our lives, but for the future we'd built, the one I was starting to remember. The police arrived, tipped off by an anonymous call Lila, I later learned, had been tracking our movements. Vincent and his men were arrested, and Caleb and I stumbled out into the dawn, bruised but alive. In the ambulance, he held my hand, his wedding ring glinting. "I thought I'd lose you again," he whispered. I kissed him, tasting salt and relief. And for the first time, I felt the weight of our love, not just its shadow. Back in Santa Monica, we rebuilt slowly. My memories didn't return fully, but fragments surfaced: a laugh, a touch, a vow. Therapy helped, and so did Caleb's patience. We volunteered at the LGBTQ shelter, helping others find the courage we'd fought for. One evening, on the cliff where we'd married, Caleb read me a letter from the box, his voice steady. "You're my home, Ethan, no matter what." I wrote a new entry in my journal that night. "I don't remember everything, but I choose you." Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours, forged in pain, redeemed by love. As we stood together, watching the sunset, I knew I'd woken from more than a coma. I'd woken to a life worth fighting for, with the man who'd never stopped fighting for me.